Welcome to the Hunter's Campfire. G'day, my name is Mark van den Bogart, hunter, fisherman, writer and storyteller. With me is Ian Hurley, technologist, hunter, hunting mentor and proud father. Together we want to help you get hunting. Our focus is helping you make the most of public land hunting right here in Australia, even if you don't live in a state where it's offered. This podcast series is all about helping you get started, helping you build your knowledge and your confidence so you can get out there and live your own hunting adventures. Now, let's get started. So we are going St George, Ulo, Quilpie for 3 days, Eromanga and Thargomindah. So we'll get within about just under 300 kilometres of the South Australian border and probably no closer than 100 kilometres to the New South Wales border at any one time. We were going to drop in a lightning ridge, but that's all, that's not going to happen. So we'll go out that way and enjoy the... We've been out there before. We last time we came, we went north and then dropped down. So we did the development road of Windora. But as amazingly enough, we got flooded out in the desert country. So we couldn't stay. We had to miss Windora because we're stuck a night in Longreach.
That Windora to Quilpie road after the rain and the wildflowers have come up, it's pretty stunning.
Yeah, that was the thing. You see, I was talking to the boys saying, "Oh, we're going to the desert. It's going to be all red." When we get past bloody Longreach, it's just green as can be. There's like 300 kilometres of green and water on the road. So.
Yeah, I've just come back from out there, and it's very much that way. It's really nice, and the locals are happy. The beef prices are up, the volumes are up, the commodities are up, everything's up, and it's a very buoyant place out there.
Mate, I reckon, New South Wales is the same. You go touring New South Wales, there's more grain on the ground than there is ground.
The rain here, right across New South Wales, the grass is fantastic. Feed. It's just, once we get through COVID, it bounces back very quick. And I'm seeing that with my retail customers. My North Coast guys have been open for 4 or 5 days and they run off their feet. So it does bounce back very quickly. But, so much of the income from the bush as far as tourism comes from the cities. Yeah. And they can't get out there. Yeah, that's the biggest issue. That really hurts them,
That's it. Well, we were there in April and we were going to go again, but we can't go because we went down last time. We went to Orange and all that stuff. But we were like coming back from Cowra one day along just cross country from Cowra to Parkes. So, and we went through this tiny little village where the actual road kind of goes around the main street now, but we actually said, we dropped down in the main street, drove through the end of it. So there was like maybe a pub, maybe about 12 buildings in the main street. Got to the end of the main street and there's just a yard, and I reckon it was once a petrol station. So it's concrete with a grass yard in the back, overgrown grass, And there was about $30 million worth of machinery sitting in that behind that petrol. Just all brand new, reds, orange, yellows, just new machinery. That's where they must have just been dropping it. There it is. So one of my favourite parts of our conversation is quaig. I really like quaig.
Quaig's been very inactive, and I don't know how he gets away with. I've been getting away with some of the stuff, but Quaig hasn't come out for a little while.
Quaig is
alter ego.
Craig's secondary Facebook profile when he gets shit canned.
Yeah, went through a stage where I was getting banned every other week. So,
and I usually come on and say, "Where's Quaig? I miss Quaig."
All right, so you can introduce them both, Mark. That'll be fine.
Sure. And got some news on this one. So I did a article on this in the current SSAA.
It's out of frame.
There we
go.
And remember, I mentioned the fact that the guy who made it is James, but the initial is I on it. Well, some guy wrote into me from SSAA, one of the readers, and explained why I is J. And I went, well, thanks very much, mate. I never realized, this guy know what he's talking about too. It's all because Jay was the so on this particular gun, it's made by a name of a guy, James Barber, who made it probably in some time between 1725 and 1740, maybe as late as 1750, but more than likely 1740. So it was a flintlock pistol because they were all flintlocks back then. Now, the interesting thing is on the stamps, it says IB, as in his last name's Barber and his first name's James, but it uses the letter I. And I was a bit thrown by that. And one of the readers from SSAA contacted me and said that J is the youngest letter in the English alphabet, and that it came into vogue with the printing of the King James Bible, and before that I was often used. So that's why I is J. So how's that to confuse the hell out of you?
You've done a number on me, mate.
Yeah, confused it. And interesting thing is, last night I was shooting a Glock 17, so I've finally moved out of the 1800s.
Have you got power at home yet?
Yeah, the mouse, man, he's running like a champ outside. He's going crazy. Okay, so let's get into it. So, good evening, Craig. Great to have you here. Tonight with us guys is Craig Golding, who is a 32-year veteran of the hunting, fishing and outdoor industry. And Craig has had a number of businesses. The most recently, I think it's Hook and Bone Trading. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he's on Facebook, and it's a very nice hoodie, by the way. And before that, well, my first interaction with Craig when he was still running a store was at Field and Stream in Nowra, where I bought some. What did I buy off you? I bought some Hunter's Element gear. So thanks for being with us, Craig. And really, for us tonight, we want to get your take on the hunting and fishing scene, and especially since you also involved with Shooters Union in New South Wales, and even your family's involved with Shooters Union. I understand your daughter is one of the development officers for the Shooters Union as well. So over to you.
Well, firstly, thanks for having me, guys. It was I did a bit of background work and watched a couple of the Hunters Campfire podcasts during the week, and I just found the whole concept really refreshing. You know, the push towards public land hunting, how-tos, and just making it simple for the newbies getting into the sport. I think it's been well overdue, and I think congratulations to you for that. Okay.
Thanks,
look, I was 12 when I got into hunting. That was with my dad. And back then it was mainly rabbits, but I've been fishing from a very, very early age. You know, I'm talking 2.5, 3-year-old. I was fishing with dad, mum and my uncles. So, yeah, look, it was probably always, and dad was very keen pig hunter back in the day, you know, and I guess that's what kicked it off, all dad's stories about pig hunting with his mates. And little Burke or North Burke or Louth or those areas, which was, you know, the pig hunting mecca back then, you know. So I started hunting when I was 12, shooting my first rabbits. That was down around Gundagai in southern New South Wales. My maternal grandfather hunted, as did my maternal uncle as well. So, you know, classic case of having someone in the family introduce you to that sport, that recreation. But yeah, it was very much only rabbits and foxes back then, and deer only just making a sort of an impact, and you'd see stories in Outdoors, the old Outdoors magazine, about fallow deer particularly. But when I got my first car, which bloody hell, I couldn't even tell you when that was. That would have been a Galant station wagon, but certainly moved further afield, and goats become on the menu. You know, pigs were always. I never really went out particularly to chase pigs. I always went out to chase goats. I loved hunting goats. You know, I got a pile of bloody goat horns down there, and I enjoy hunting goats, you know. But then I was 23 when I got involved in the firearms industry. I became the Victorian sales rep for Fuller Firearm, so 23 years old. And that just changed my world, you know. Sales rep in Victoria, and I think the first month I was there, I was invited out sambar deer hunting, and that was it. That was it. If I've got a favourite animal to hunt, it's sambar deer. I mean, it's just, and yeah, that was the start of it. That was in '89, and from then, it just sort of grew from there. And the deer hunting bug bit fairly hard, and fallow deer, red deer. I've hunted a lot of red deer in Queensland, particularly New Zealand. So I guess deer hunting is what I love to do. But yeah, summer's coming on, so yeah, it'll be every sort of couple of days I'll be up chasing rabbits as well. So it's a very, because I've been lucky enough to get involved in the industry, I've met a very, very wide cross section of people interested in the wide cross section of hunting. For part of that time, and I think I was with Full of Firearms for about 9 years, certainly up until '97 when we got retrenched after the buyback and all that. But I was involved in clay target shooting for a while, sponsored shooter for Fuller's for a little bit of a time, AA grade shooter, shot in the Nationals. That was alongside Michael Diamond, and you just couldn't hold a candle to Michael, you know.
I can claim that fame myself.
Yeah, yeah.
What, being by Michael Diamond?
Yeah.
Being smashed by Andy Vella and Michael Diamond at the Nationals in Newcastle. Yeah, I graded up to AA over about a year and a half of picking up my first shotgun and just took to it instinctively and really enjoyed it. But yeah, those guys are cool cucumbers, man. When they walk up to assess a field, they
you know, it's quite an achievement to get to A grade, AA grade, but then they're another league. And you're right, they're just cool as a cucumber, you know. But it's funny, you know, because when I got retrenched in '97 from the firearms industry, I didn't pick up a clay target gun again and haven't since. You know, because just the sheer love of hunting. If I've got time to dedicate to it, I'll go hunting. You know, I fish to relax, but hunting's just, that's the passion, you know. So I've been introduced to sambar deer, shot my first fallow around the same time, and of course more goats and pigs, and pigs became a big thing. All that was well before state forest hunting as well, or as we know it now, state forest hunting. You could still get into state forests down here then if you knew one of the head foresters, and the guy we knew ran the Bombala State Forest office down southeast forests in New South Wales. So we'd rock through there about 3 o'clock in the morning, grab our permits that were sticky taped to the front door, and go and hunt in now what is the Bondo State Forest, I think it is. Oh, yeah.
Bondo.
And back then it was alive with red deer. A lot of red deer there. Sambar hadn't really made an impact at that stage, but a lot of red deer. A few hunting clubs got onto that early on, and they were pretty much decimated. But it was while it lasted, it was very, very good hunting.
Was that Bondi, you said, or Bondo?
Well, Bondo, actually. So Bondo, I think it connects to Bondi somewhere there, yeah.
Yeah, because Bondi is still a very well-regarded hunting block.
It is, and there was a cracker fallow, a mate of mine shot there last season, come out. Yeah, very, very nice animal. But that particular area in Bondi was around a place called Packer Swamp. That's now a national park.
Oh, okay.
But it was, a lot. And the red deer back then down there, they had wapiti through them as well, so they were a very, very big animal. Had a couple of good roars down there. Never really shot much, but, you know, we did strike a roar down there one year, and it was quite good. And that was, again, not long after that I shot off to New Zealand and experienced a New Zealand roar, and it was fantastic. You know?
That's a bit different. Yep.
It is different, you know. It's I never really struck. That New Zealand roar, the first trip over there. And I've had about 10 trips over there now, but it was a fantastic experience. And I hadn't experienced up until probably 4 years ago a red deer roar like that. And we struck it one year up on the Ridge Group ballot, and they were going nuts. And it's just the most awesome sound, you know. But yeah, really enjoy that. But so 96, 97, I got retrenched. That was after Port Arthur. And then I went on to become the Australian and New Zealand sales manager for Shakespeare Fishing Tackle.
Oh, okay.
And I held that role there for about 7 or 8 years, and then went on to become a director of an outdoor company, which I was part owner of. I walked away from that in about 2019 and opened up Field and Stream Barrel in 2010 it was. And we held that shop there for 10 years. So we went through the global financial crisis and then sold it just before COVID hit. And I think in hindsight, it was just timing was fantastic. But it was a good little shop. And then I was in that shop for 2 years and I was approached by the importers of Wyrak air rifles and Wyrak rifles and H&N air rifle pellets down there in Melbourne, Alcock and Pearce.
Yep.
So that was in 2012. I become the New South Wales and South East Queensland sales agent for Alcock and Pearce. So I'm still doing that. So I've still got a wholesale gig, and I've been doing that now for what's that? Oh, geez, 9 years. So I still managed to get around the country, New South Wales and Queensland, selling that. And that's been very good. That's it's keeping in touch with all my wholesale customers from years ago. And then this year we launched Hook and Bone Trading Company, which is just a range of hoodies, T-shirts and stickers and stubby holders, and just mainly to keep my hand in that sort of particular game, you know. I think it was about almost 12 months ago now, I was approached by Shooters Union to become their New South Wales State Coordinator. And that was baptism by fire because I'd only been in the role about 2 months, and I was asked to front the Senate inquiry into the New South Wales Criminal Use Bill. Okay. Now, I hadn't been in Parliament House since the school excursion back in the 70s.
A bit daunting.
It was a little bit daunting, but I've got to tell you, it was an experience I absolutely loved, and I'd do it again tomorrow. Put a lot of effort. I hadn't even seen the Shooters Union submission at that stage, so it was some heavy reading and getting on top of what the issue was, and it was quite successful. We've ended up with others, of course, WSAA and GameCon and others that were involved have managed to stifle the criminal use bill for now. And but yeah, great experience, absolutely great experience. But I guess from an advocacy point of view, I first became aware of the attacks to firearm owners and hunting back in '88 before I got into the industry. That was when Barry Unsworth made his ill-fated attack on New South Wales firearm owners. He wanted some drastic restrictions down here, and of course he was voted out largely by the gun lobby. But when I got in the industry in '89, the industry was right behind the push to get Barry Unsworth out, and Full of Firearms at the time did a lot at their own cost, did a lot of the marketing and the promotional campaigns to get that across to shooters. And I couldn't, back then, I'm thinking, '88, I'm thinking to myself, well, I just shoot rabbits. Why do they want to take my gun off me? I just couldn't get in my head why someone would want to do that. We're not doing anything, and that's when I first became aware of it. And then in about, I got married in '96, so I guess in about '94, it was about just after the Shooters and Fishers Party was formed down here. I got hold of a document that John Tingle had put together on how to form a hunting club. And I thought, that's a good idea. More hunting clubs, more hunters, and, we become stronger. So back then I formed the St George Hunters and Anglers Association. And of course, back then, the New South Wales regs dictated that you had to have a genuine reason to keep your firearms licence. It was a time when registration was coming in. So you had to have a genuine reason. Genuine reason was being a member of a hunting club. So we kicked off the St George Hunters and Anglers Club. So that was about '94. So that's still going now, a long, long time. And so that was probably my first step, I guess. And then from there, we just promoted new hunters to the sport, as you do at hunting clubs. And that was probably my first toe into the whole advocacy role. And since then, 5 years ago, I formed the Windsor Caribou Hunters and Anglers Club.
Yep.
And
that's
a great little club. It's growing reasonably slow, but we've been doing it that way. But it's a good little club. And
Craig, sorry, what was the name of that club?
The Windsor Caribou Hunters and Anglers Club. So that's located in the New South Wales Southern Highlands, so it's down in Sydney.
I still don't understand what you said.
Say it again, slow for Queenslanders. Say it slow for Queenslanders.
And Kiwis.
Windsor Caribou.
Windsor Caribou.
Yeah, so it's a river in the Southern Highlands, the Windsor Caribou River. So now that little club, we've got
caribou in the winter, is what I'm understanding. Okay, moving along.
We've got we're now at the stage where we've got a little bit of a sub ranch forming down here in the Shoalhaven, and the start of one hopefully in the New South Wales Central Coast. So, but I find that quite rewarding. And probably 7 years ago, I became a firearm safety awareness training officer and a licensed LEAP provider.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chloe got involved. Chloe got involved. She was when she was going to school, and she just swing past the shop of an afternoon, and so I guess maybe 11 or 12, she got involved in the shop. Couldn't keep her out of there. Couldn't keep her out of there. And then we did more over the time. We'd do our all our gun shows, and then sooner rather than later, Chloe was taking over the gun shows and setting up gun shows herself. She then obviously got a licensing and all that sort of stuff. By the time I sold the shop in Barrel, Chloe was actually running it, and she had a stint there for about 6 or 8 months, might have been 12 months, with the new owners as managing the shop. So that was good for her, and that exposure for Chloe at the gun shows and the shop. She did a bit of work for the Shoes and Fishes Party as well. She was picked up by, funnily enough, the same company I started with when I was 23, and she's now the Ridgeline rep for outdoor sporting agencies. So absolutely loving it and kicking some really good goals. So she's found a place there. But she's also the business development officer for Shooters Union Australia as well. So she manages their social media, Instagram and Facebook pages to a degree. One of the things I find interesting, and it comes up all the time, is when you're putting yourself out there to promote a particular issue or a sport, there's always the people that'll come up and say, what's your agenda? You've got to have an agenda. What are you doing it for? You're doing it for yourself. Well, I am doing it for myself, but I'm doing it for my kids. I'm doing it for my grandkids because I want to be able to hunt with my grandkids. I've been very lucky in that, well, I guess my kids have been very lucky. They, in a very early age, they'd done more hunting than I did at the same age, and very good hunters in their own right. But that's the thing that just drives me, being able to get more people into the sport. I think we averaged before COVID, we were averaging about 120 firearms license tests a year. We'd rent out the Barrel Bowling Club every sort of month and run a whole heap through there. That's quite enough now with COVID, but the big thing for me is getting more people in the sport because we're under a constant attack by others. And this month's been a busy month. We've had the animal welfare reform come out. We had submissions on that. We had the explosives regulations down here they wanted to change, which would have affected how much gunpowder we can hold for no other reason than just to do something to justify their own existence. And now we've got the noise guide for local government, which has a whole page or two and a half pages on shooting ranges. So it's just a constant attack that we need to be aware of. So that's an overview of what I'm up to and what I do.
Oh, wow, mate. But you don't get much time for a beer by the sounds of it.
Oh yeah, it's not. Been doing it for so long. It's not a chore. I'm stuck at home now for nine weeks with COVID, and that's allowed me to sort of catch up on a lot of the Shooters Union stuff and probably put a bit more effort into that. And I'm on the Shooters Union delegate within GameCon as well.
Yeah.
Which is one of our peak bodies down here. We've been, myself and the secretary of GameCon, who's the delegate for my hunting club, we've been very active in trying to get GameCon back on the radar of people. It's sort of languished there for quite a bit as a peak body. I guess that's one of the arguments I've got about peak bodies. There's some good ones and there's some not so good ones. That's what we got down here, and we've got to work with it.
Yeah. Look, I plenty of questions, but I suppose the first one for me is, being that you've been in the industry for so long, I mean, what is the punter like today compared to the punter of 30 years ago who'd walk into one of your shops? has there been a cultural difference in the people who are buying from you or were buying from you, or is it?
I don't think there's necessarily a cultural difference. There's certainly more learned, I guess, now. They'll come in knowing what they want and prepared to pay the dollars for it. You know what I mean? You look at the way hunting clothing has evolved. You know, when I started hunting, it was Swanee bush shirts and trackie pants. You know, I can honestly remember having a conversation with a mate of mine, Steve Judd, and saying, wouldn't it be great if someone came out with a range of camouflage trackie dacks and hoodies? And that it wasn't long bloody after that Swazi apparel hit the scene. John Natoli, then Swazi apparel. And then from then, the whole scene changed, you know, and the gear was good. The gear's excellent now, but that Swazi gear, the first stuff we bought away from our Swannies and army pants, that would have lasted me 20 years.
Yeah, it was military designed, wasn't it, mate?
It was awesome stuff, you know. And now, of course, you got Ridgeline, you got Spiker, you got Hunter's Element, and all sorts of other companies and that, and they're all following that whole outdoor clothing style, and they're just good bits of gear. So that's the one thing. They're more learned. You know, they're more, because it's a younger generation, the millennials and younger again. They're probably, they've grown up knowing the gun laws as they are now. So they're a little bit less, and we talk about 96, and try not to much these days because it's going back over old ground, but you know, they don't understand what we had because they never had it. So there's been a cultural change there, generational change as well. You know, look at public land hunting. You know, I think there's about 23,000 people down here in New South Wales with the R license for New South Wales public land, and a lot of them are younger people. You know.
What about the numbers? So, you know, when you started this, obviously hunting has grown over those years, but, you know, the attack is growing as well, you know, from those that don't want us to have this way of life and these pastimes. Do you find that the numbers are consistent? Are they growing consistently, or are they shrinking? You're seeing people come through the door to get licenses, and I know COVID has made that interesting. It's skewed the numbers a little bit, but do you think this pastime is growing, or are we losing members?
It's difficult. Look, if you went on the, I think we're possibly losing members. That seems to be the international trend. That there's less people hunting. The older guys are getting too old to hunt, but we haven't got the same number of young people coming through. I would suspect that's the international trend. I suspect that we're a similar trend here as well. We are seeing a larger prevalence now of women in the sport, which is one growth area. But yeah, generally speaking, I think we're seeing less. The numbers, if you would check the New South Wales Registry website at the moment, they'll state there's 241,000 licence holders in New South Wales, and 190,000 of them have licences for hunting or feral animal control or pest control. That was 2020. I suspect those numbers are a little bit light on. I think it's probably a little bit closer to 300,000 in total. But certainly pre-COVID, there was a bit of a push ahead. And I think too, we went through a stage there where the shows like Meat Eater, that's one area where it's changed. There's a greater focus now on, well, I've seen anyway, in that people they are hunting physically now for the table. You know what I mean? That they're getting there. I get a lot of people ask me, they want a license, they want to go hunting, they want to hunt for food.
Yeah.
That is prevalent. Okay. And it shows like Meat Eater, and even your Facebook pages like Field to Fork or Paddock to Plate.
Yeah.
And even now, you know, some of our chefs, Maggie Bear, Annalise Gregory in Tasmania, very, very focused on gathering from the wild. You know, even Gordon Ramsay, you know, hunting.
Just had to go, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. They all do it. They all recognise it. Yet we're still under attack constantly by the likes of the Animal Justice Party. They are very, very well organised, far more organised than what any of our hunting organisations are. You know,
single purpose, Craig. I think
single
so.
Purpose, yeah.
And I also think back to the food and the reason why people are coming through this for a quality protein for the table. Your comment earlier that people are coming to the stores, that they're more learned. They've got access to Facebook, they've got access to YouTube, they've got access to training on demand. I remember pulling apart the first red deer leg on my front bench. I actually had a young foster kid living with us at the time, and I thought, I wonder how this is going to go. And I pulled the back wheel out and put it on the bench, and we got YouTube out and we put the iPad on the thing, and I said, you tell me how to cut it and I'll do the job. And we dissected that thing muscle group at a time together on that was 10 or 12 years ago or something. And it was a great learning experience. It was fantastic. But you can then get into YouTube and various other things, or the meat eater cookbooks and things that come out that you get access to because they're well promoted, and you learn how to cook properly. This whole home kitchen thing has taken off. I was looking at housing demographics, just to digress a little bit. They were saying back in the day, you would have a 3-bedroom house with 4 children. One of the bedrooms was spare for a guest. Now you have 2 children, 5 bedrooms, and your communal space where your guests would come into is your kitchen, and the worktop around your kitchen and that open plan space. It's not the formal lounge that's set aside just for that purpose. So we've all moved into the kitchen, and you socialize around the food, and you socialize around the wine, and you socialize around that whole process. And people are now wanting to experiment a lot more with their food. And I find that in our branch in the ADA, we have people joining us because they as a couple want to go and harvest, good quality proteins that haven't been through factory farming, or, whatever the thing is that they're concerned about. And I've seen that growth. It's incredible. And I really hope that growth would push along this industry, or this part of our lives, and help combat, I guess, the negative.
Yeah, look, we went back. I think when deer got taken off the game status in New South Wales, we went back a fair way then, because we had them recognised as a renewable resource. And the one thing that irks me as an advocate of shooting is the guy whose sole purpose of getting firearms license is to shoot feral animals. And that's his way into properties. I'm going to help the farmer. I'm going to shoot feral animals. And yeah, look, that's credible. That's great. Foxes, rabbits, but they don't see our larger game animals as the renewable resource they are.
Yeah, very true.
That
true.
pisses me off. Because it's just a waste. Absolute waste.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, that's 100%. I mean, it's this crazy idea that it's a sunk loss, and you're going backwards with them. But the reality is, that they are a resource on a whole spectrum of being a resource. They're not only a resource in that first, the most immediate, where they're actually a meat animal. Then there's what follows that, and what follows that, and what follows that. And that deer has the potential to make the state, a couple of businesses, and a few other people, $3,000, $4,000. It's actually an incredible resource. Consider if you actually think about how far back it pushes. From the fact that someone wants to shoot that deer, so they go through all these steps and pay all this money to get there. I still say, the most expensive meat in my fridge is red deer. I think it's still running about $500-600 a kilo. If you really think about it, by the time I'm up there in my $40,000-50,000, I mean, you're even worse. You just bought a more expensive car. By the time you bought that car, bought the gear, bought that, and then shot that animal, and actually think, okay, what's the true cost of that? It's remarkable. I mean, that's what they realised in the Northern Territory with barramundi. Barramundi are far more worth to the sports fishermen than they are to a gill netter.
Yeah, and it's a big rabbit hole to run down. I think talking about the economic benefits, etc., of hunting, and we probably won't chase that one today because we've had a really good session on that in a previous podcast. But but I am really interested in the Shooters Union component of your world, and how. Look, I guess I wasn't overly aware of it, to be honest with you. I wouldn't say I've been in the industry a long time. I've been around my little club a long time, and I put a lot of energy into that. But certainly learned a lot more about Shooters Union, I think, and I could have this terribly wrong, and that will require a lot of editing. But through the COVID period, when all of these stores were being shut and restrictions of trade and all of those sorts of things, you guys were front and center, from what I remember, trying to advocate for these businesses to remain open and remain viable for our country folk. I've got that right, don't I, Craig?
Yeah. To be fair, yeah, that's right. But again, to be fair to everybody else, Shooters Union is just one proactive group. There are others that aren't so proactive, certainly, but Shooters Union, we're constantly doing something. Today was letters, for me anyway, today it was letters to the New South Wales Firearms Registry over mandatory attendances. There was letters about the Mini 14 Ruger, which I found out today was prohibited from since February this year, but no one was told, none of our dealers were told. So there's constantly something going on, attacks in Victoria, which have to get our attention. Every state's always got something going on in relation to firearms, so there's constant emails, and I'm getting emails every day about people that have lost their license, or they had their license application knocked back, or their renewal knocked back. Craig, what can we do? Who do you suggest? Well, we're not lawyers, but we give people the best advice we can at the time and recommend who they should see, and the response has been quite good, But it is an issue. It is an absolute terrible issue down here. The days of the firearms registries going back 10 years, doing a security check, they're going back 15, 18, 20 years until they can find a red flag event that allows them to say, no, you're not having a license, or your renewal done, And then it's a matter of putting in your appeal, and then, legal advice as to, where you go. And the whole reason for them doing this is the majority of people won't challenge it legally, whether they think they've got a case or not. I refer a lot of people to Mainstone lawyers. As I said, we're not solicitors, but we know a way out of it. And so I refer a lot of people to Stephen Mainstone at Mainstone Lawyers for these purposes, and he has a very good result through NCAT. But again, all this gets caught up in NCAT. Nothing's an easy fix. But Shooters Union is very active, very, very active. In all states except Victoria. Funnily enough, they don't have anybody representing them down there yet, but I think that'll come in due course.
Yeah, and for the average punter that hasn't had a lot to do with it or understood what Shooters Union does, do you want to just maybe give that elevator pitch a bit more of a run? Why should I be interested, and what do you do for the
Shooters Union? They advocate for firearm ownership for everybody. Okay, not just the sporting shooter or the target shooter, or they'll advocate firearm ownership for everybody on every grounds. Semi-automatics, whatever it happens to be, they advocate for shooters as a whole, for industry, for employees that use firearms, the whole lot. So there's no aspect of firearms that Shooters Union won't challenge. That's in a nutshell, really. You've got a lot of specialist groups that concentrate on specialist issues. Shooters Union is more encompassing than that. They're concentrating more in New South Wales because of the high prevalence of licences that are issued for hunting and feral animal control. They're becoming more focused on the hunting aspects of it. We put out a press release earlier in the year. We want to try and get the general duck season back in New South Wales. That created, Shooters Union right behind that. That created a hell of a furore. But that's the sort of things we'll start the whole process going again. We once a month I'll send emails to various politicians about expanding state forest hunting to include selected New South Wales national parks. Okay, that's an ongoing thing with us. And again, I preface that by saying that there's other groups, WSAA, Shooters and Fishers Party, are all working towards the same thing. GameCon, same thing, and it's collectively that we're going to make a difference. So yeah, that's sort of in a nutshell. Yeah, but the other thing too is you get a lot of bang for your buck with the Shooters Union. I think it only costs about $30 to join Shooters Union, and it's
here we go, guys.
Hey.
And it is on a percentage basis, it's the largest growing club in Australia.
Yeah.
So
I joined the Shooters Union Pistol Club.
Yeah. The work that I saw Shooters Union do around that COVID period, which is really what brought it to my attention, certainly is impressed me, and I'll push towards a membership and advocating for membership. I think it's a great idea. Always wanted to talk to somebody about it and what they really focus on, and that's been a really good summary of that, Craig. So I appreciate that.
Sorry, as I said, with the depth of Shooters Union, in Victoria and South Australia, we're chasing the issue of gel blasters for people. So it's not just it's everything that involves firearms or firearm related issues.
Yeah. So how does the message get out then, Craig? You obviously do a lot of training with new hunters around your firearms. You're doing R license training and things like that.
Yeah. So
membership's important. That's where your money comes from.
So prior to selling the shop, I was doing a lot of inquiries come through the Firearm Safety Awareness Foundation for the license of that. So when I get contacted by people who want to get their firearms license, we go through the whole process of your firearms license, your genuine reason, club membership, R license, very important. One of the things I did mention with our club, it is a prerequisite with our club now that all our members must have an R license. Okay, they might not use it very regularly, but the simple fact is, if we don't support it, we'll lose it. And then you got the insurance benefits with it. So we push the genuine reason club membership R license, and we firmly recommend that people join a larger advocacy group such as Shooters Union. Okay, so we're trying to put the whole package together, and then not that it's taken up very often, but being the Leap service provider, we can do the whole caping and butchering displays for people through our club. We've got the good premises for that, and so we're trying to encompass the whole package.
Look, that's a really interesting approach, and to talk about one of our previous guests, Ned Macon, actually spoke about the fact that he said, get the R license, simply that the more people have got it, the more weight it's got, and that makes a lot of sense. And to be honest, my membership of firearms and various clubs like that is very much in that. I often join a club really just as a way of donating to that club. So I'm in more than one club for that. And to be honest, I've been a member of Shooters, Fishers and Farmers in New South Wales for years, and I joined that as soon as I found out about public land hunting. That's the first thing I did, and so I've donated to Phil Donato's campaign. He's that is another state, and various other people over the time, simply because I think that's a really for me that's a way of participating and actually supporting something that I directly benefit from. So I'm very much, I like that idea of you actually saying to members, hey, look, it's not just about this. There's a whole range of moving parts here, and if you support those moving parts, we all better, we get on better together. So that's very commendable, mate. It's a very interesting way of approaching it, because often, with clubs, they try to demonstrate how cheap they are, and from a loss point of view, well, you join us, it doesn't cost you much, but you're actually saying, well, you know what, spend a bit of money here, spend a bit of money here, spend a bit of money here, and you'll get a lot more bang for your buck.
Yeah, that's right. It's about value adding, and making the experience a full experience for people. Our little club introduced over the last 5 years quite a few people sambar hunting in Victoria, and these guys, and within 2 trips they were shooting sambar. We were able to put them into areas where we knew there was deer, show them a few things, and they were shooting sambar. Those guys are on our committee now. and teaching the next lot that come through, or encouraging the next lot. So look, that's very important. I think you touched on the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. In New South Wales, we would be in a terrible spot if it wasn't for the Shooters and Fishers Party. They do a lot of good work. You don't always see it, but behind the scenes, they're constantly advocating for shooters.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, and I think the important part of that is you don't see it. There's, it just doesn't get the headlines. It's not that important from a media point of view, but there's no doubt that it's a continuing battle, and they're always doing something, which I think one of the things that we really we've spoken about here, and it's the idea of how can you participate at some level, and it's about finding those people who are supportive of you. And very rarely you're going to get 100% alignment, but you have to kind of make a decision. Are they for me or against me, and figure out which side of the fence you're on.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, I'd much rather support the concept than an individual person. If the concept's sound and it's going in the right direction for our love of hunting and fishing and whatever happens to be, you've got to support that concept. You might not like the politics behind it. You might not like how the cogs are working, but the concept has got to be supported.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, and I think people don't get that. I don't understand that with politics.
No, it's not shopping. You're not going to the groceries and you're going to buy exactly what you want.
No.
That's not what it is. You got to find which one pushes in the direction that best supports you. But you'd be a very rare person indeed to find one that 100% support or 100% alignment.
So, you got questions for me? Because I've got through my notes.
I don't even know what he's got there. Sorry.
It's just thank you for joining. I'm now a member of Shooters Union.
He's joined Shooters Union.
While you fellas were talking, I just punched in my PayPal details and off we go. No, I've intended to do it for a while, and you've just got me into it, so that's fine. Excellent. I don't have any other specific questions around shooting. I mean, I could probably come up with a whole bunch of them, but I'm quite interested in the hook and bone business that you've started up too, Craig, and what it's about and why that happened, because you talked earlier about it being a bit of a merchandise business. But
why did hook and bone happen? Righto. So I think Mark knows I'm a big fan of the Ridge project you've got in Queensland that Clark McGee kicked off and his mates 25 years ago, actually, I think, 25, 26 years ago. So I've done a little bit of hunting with Clark over the years, both through Ridge and with him as a hunting guide. I shot a massive scrub bull with Clark. And I hunted rooster with Clark a couple of years back. So that rooster you see on the hook and bone logo is actually the antlers and skull of the rooster I took with Clark. Okay. I had a photo of the rooster, the head sitting there in camp, and I thought, geez, that's a bloody cracker photo. What can I do with that? So I ended up getting a tattoo, right, of the skull and the antler. And I've always wanted a tattoo, and I thought, well, a hunting theme suits me, hunting and fishing theme. So, you'll see the logo. It's got the fish hook in the middle. That represents me hunting and fishing. And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, shit, hook and bone, right? And I thought, and I got a graphic artist onto it, and we come up with, we cleaned the logo up a bit, and then my wife says, geez, that's a good logo, it's a good word, and I thought, I might get a hoodie. So I got a hoodie, and then, of course, people want to see the hoodies, so I sold some hoodies, and then I'm selling hoodies now through Instagram and Facebook, and I like creating things that are hunting, field and stream Australia, and you don't make a hell of a lot of money going to gun shows, but you're interacting with other like-minded people. So you're selling something, you're making someone happy. They bought a knife off you or this, that, and the other thing. So, yeah, it's just, hook and bone. It's a sort of a love child, I guess. And we're now doing T-shirts and hoodies and stubby holders. And, so, of course, COVID sort of slowed it down a bit because we've got no gun shows and we've got no field days. So it slowed it down a bit. But did the process of developing a website, and then we'll launch into more products. We've got access to a lot of products, gun bags and all sorts of things. So we'll have the Hook and Bone logo, and hopefully we'll build it to the point of view where it'll become standalone, and I can sell the products back to my retail customers, and they can make some money out of it. So that's the long-term plan. Yeah. So just another feather to our business, but something I get a lot of enjoyment out of. I love, it's funny, like I did a recent Instagram promo, and I think something like 25% of people hitting the promo were from Victoria, but they represented the most people buying the gear. The amount of girls in Victoria buying hoodies for themselves and their partners. It was phenomenal, and it goes back to that sort of per capita. I think Victoria's got the highest percentage of hunters per capita than anywhere in the state, in the country. And they spend their money. So. But yeah,
and they've been locked away for nearly 3/4 of a year with the internet at their fingertips. Yeah.
It's I do a little bit of public hand hunting in New South Wales, but yeah, given the time, I'll fly down to Corryong or Bright and hunt sambar any day of the week. There's a level of simplicity to it that we just don't have in New South Wales yet, if you know what I mean. But again, and again, you hunt sambar, so it's worth the trip,
Yeah, we take a trip down from Toowoomba, where I am, usually with 8 to 10 guys, once or twice a year, to chase sambar, and it is a different world. It's very much like the public land access that you have in New Zealand. You can literally step off the side of the road almost in Victoria, not far out of the main township or 80k areas of Bright and into some of those places.
Chloe and I, it was actually the folks of one of Chloe's articles, I think the October edition of Sporting Shooter. We literally did that. We drove off the highway into a culvert, hunted a valley, put up a 24-inch stag in velvet, and we'll go back there as soon as we can to hunt him again. And I was literally driving 200 metres off the road, parking the car and walking into the bush.
When I went down for my very first time, we met a couple of I wouldn't say locals to there, but they were Victorian sambar hunters, and they met us a bit outside of Bright, and I had this grand visions of driving up these gnarly tracks and getting into the back blocks of the Snowy Mountains that I'd only heard about, I've never seen, and I still had a warm latte in my hand when I pulled into camp just outside of Bright. It wasn't quite the adventure to get to the camp. There was plenty of adventure to have after that. Don't get me wrong, and that my very first attempt, we parked at camp, and I walked up the gully just outside of camp on the first day after the 18-hour drive, and I walked straight into a big black sambar stag. 20 minutes after walking into the bush in a very dark gully under very dark trees, and he was just massive, and I could do nothing but stare at him in awe and let him walk away. Well, I didn't let him walk away. He walked away on his own terms. I was just dumbfounded.
I find sambar deer hunting more addictive than other forms of deer hunting for that reason. I've shot a number of deer sambar over the years, never the big wall hanger, but bloody hell, I've had some opportunities, and I'm still in awe of a mature sambar stag.
Aren't they impressive? Yeah,
they are an impressive animal. I missed, and I've got a habit of missing stags as well, sambar stags. I can hit all the spikes and all the does under the sun, but I miss stags, So, don't know. Just they're a great animal to hunt. Always challenging,
Yeah, and that Bright area, and I've heard it from a number of different people, that there seems to have been a fair bit of culling activity going down there, be it baiting or culling, but there seems to be a lot of the valleys in there are void of wildlife at the moment. We went down there and
stages. It goes through stages. I mean, but the sambar they're very resilient. They do bounce back very, very quickly. We went into Corryong this year, the first time in 2 years after the bushfires. Okay, and it's thick, a lot of regrowth, but the deer are back there in numbers. Now, I don't know whether you know, but Corryong got absolutely razzed, absolutely smashed by the fires. But the deer are back there, in huntable numbers. So they're very resilient and they bounce back very, very quickly. You know.
So if you're you haven't hunted sambar yet, this is a great question we were leading to. If you haven't hunted sambar yet and you want to have a sambar hunt, what would be your recommendations?
I actually thought of this the other day because when I started hunting sambar, it was the same question. Where do I go? All I was told then was the Buckland Valley, down near Bright.
That's where we were on one of ours. Yeah.
You know, when we didn't shoot. I think it took me 2 years to shoot my first stag, my first sambar deer solo down there. And then over the years, I worked out that every sort of 3 days or 4 days we were in the bush down there, we'd take a deer. So it's a matter of the first day or so, you're looking for sign, then you're hunting it, and then give it 3 or 4 days, you'd shoot a deer. The numbers of deer down there now are a lot more than what they were back then. So that was the advice they gave me back then. Just go to the Buckland Valley, start there, and you made it up for yourself, you know. These days, we've got the benefit of Errol Mason did that series of books called Secrets of the Sambar. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yep.
Well, where he put his first book out, and I don't know how many times I've read it, because you'd come back from a trip and you got in your mind everything you've seen, and you go back to the book as a reference. Oh, shit, I've seen that. And, you know, hot stag marks or this or that or the other thing. So, you know, they were a real godsend to sambar deer hunters, especially those that couldn't get down there every weekend like the Victorians can, you know. So information on sambar deer hunting now is a lot better than what it was. So if someone come to me at the club and said, Craig, I've shot this, that, and the other thing, I really want to have a crack at sambar, where should I go? I'd be inclined to send them to somewhere like Corryong, okay? There's a couple of valley options from Corryong, Thalgwa Valley, Narrowal Valley, and then you could go further down. It goes all way through to right through the back blocks there. Lots of options there and a lot of areas to hunt. The other thing too these days is a lot of the sambar deer country's got a lot of fallow through it as well. So, you know, over that Brightway now, there's red deer through there as well. So there's a lot more deer than just sambar. But yeah, I'd be inclined to sort of go Corryong that way, and then the well-known valleys of Narrowal or Thalgwa, and then the map system's very easy. You know, and you literally are driving off a main road onto a track, and then you can hunt. You know.
And so, what are you staying in the bush? Are you taking your kid? Are you staying locally in the town? What would be?
Why Corryong is easy is that there's a caravan park there, very, very close to the hunting area. So there's no sort of 4 o'clock starts to get into the bush. The hunting, it's a very steep country, but there's a high prevalence of animals. So, and a lot of fringe country as well. So you're hunting fringe country. You know, for the newbie hunting sambar, he's going to pick up sign fairly quickly. Might not be sambar, it might be fallow sign, but he's going to pick up sign straight away, and that's going to encourage them along.
Is it national park or state land?
National park in parts and state forest in other parts. Yeah.
You couldn't. Oh, so there's opportunities for indicating dogs, not dog teams, so to speak, but indicators. Yeah,
there is in this area. Yeah. So yeah, you just got to be careful of the 1080 baiting down there.
Yeah, I run a trained indicator GWP, but she's also pretty well trained on the muzzle. Yeah. She won't even touch a raw steak on the ground in front of her with the muzzle on, which is great, but she'll swallow it whole if you take it off. So I mean we're the same in state forest country up here. You go into Nundle, go into the Severn and all of these places, and it's quite heavily baited these days. So you've got to be careful with your dogs. Yeah.
So that'd be my advice, Mark. Yeah, hunt that sort of fringe country, and then you can sort of, as you, like everything, you get better at it. You push it further afield. You know.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, as you said, the suggestion is where that area you're talking about. If you wanted to, you could either camp or you could stay in the caravan park. So you, by the sounds of it, you don't need a 4-wheel drive. You could probably get 2-wheel drive access in a lot of places.
Yeah, look, obviously 4-wheel drive will get you further places. We were in Chloe's Triton 2-wheel drive ute the last trip, and that got us where we needed to go. Yeah. I own a Navara, so it's off the road as often as it's on. So we had the little Triton down there, and it was no hassles at all. You know?
Oh, sorry, that was a reference to four-wheel driving not being broken down.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, I was just picking up on that. Wasn't trying.
No, it's unfortunate.
No, but that's a good tip. No, they're good tips, because there's a lot of people that might get down there once a year, and like I said, we go down once a year. We're just picking up a tip or two from people that are willing to share, and you end up at a town like a Corryong or a Bright. We've had an interest of towing the boats down there and going across one of the lakes.
Yeah.
I think it's Dartmouth or something like that, and
Dartmouth, Eildon, another one.
Yeah, or camping off the side of the lakes or something like that. But there's so much country there, and we always see sign. What I was saying before about it being void of life last time, that Buckland Valley area, you wouldn't see a bird, a deer, you wouldn't see anything in there. And we thought, oh, what are we doing wrong? This is terrible. We jumped over the valley to the other side of the highway running through Bright and went up into there, and we were onto the deer straight away.
Yeah.
That valley. And I had a lot of people contact us through social media accounts. We chucked a video or two up, just saying, it's just been hammered by colours and baiting.
Yeah.
It was just interesting that one year after another, the whole landscape had changed. And like I say, they'll come back again. But it's a beautiful valley, it really is.
Well, I think that highlights that animals will move under pressure, regardless of what the pressure is. And I was watching one of your podcasts about New South Wales state forest hunting, and how a lot of new state forest hunters will give up on a forest after the first trip. Okay, They didn't see anything. They've driven around, didn't see anything. Every season is different, so the forest changes every season. And my advice to people hunting New South Wales state forest is don't just write it off after the first time. You got to go back in all sorts of weather. You got to go back at certain different times of the year and put that picture together.
Yeah.
The story when Chloe shot her 11-point red stag, and hunting luck changes that quick. We'd been hunting up in the Brisbane Valley for reds. It was probably the first week of the April school holidays down here, so we could get back for Easter. It was hot. The stags were shutting down at sort of 7:30 in the morning after roaring all night. And it was Chloe's turn to shoot a stag if we could. So we were working really hard. So we're 4 days into a 6-day hunt, and I was knackered. Just worked really, really hard. And another morning we got busted, and it was hot. We went our way back to the car, and Chloe said, "Look, just give the roaring horn another go." And just like that, we got an answer. Not ridges away, right in our bloody lap. And then it was all on. And that's hanging up on the wall now behind me, a nice 11-point red stag. Hunting luck, you make your own luck. And the more you're in the bush and putting that picture together is what's important, But too often people are too prepared now to write off a state forest without sort of really giving it the opportunity it deserves,
Yeah, look, it's an interesting thing. I think one of the great joys of public land hunting is that it's not easy. So always that people talk about trophies and and various approaches to trophy maintenance and how do you keep good stock going with or what you might call game management. I feel that if you hunt successfully in the state forest, you've done the legwork. If it's there in front of you, you take it. You've earned that animal. That's there's no one saying, oh, they're down the back blocks or this or that. You've earned that animal and you go for it. But I think that's why when you talk to people who hunt state forests, they actually kind of get that kind of weird look in their eye because it's actually an adventure every time you go. One of the guys we had on before, Jace, was very experienced private land hunter. Went to state forest hunting and completely different approach. So I think it's right. Too many people are going to go, I went there, there's no game there or something like that. But the thing is, it's just not waiting for you. You've got to go ahead and find it.
There's a forest just southwest of me that a 15-point red stag come out this raw, right, by a bow hunter. He went back 2 days later and shot a 10-point red stag in the same area. During the off-season, outside the rut, there is no deer sign in this place. Right? They come in, they make their scrapes, their wallows, and then they're gone again after the rut. Someone going in outside the road wouldn't know there was deer there. This young bloke had put the effort in. He's a client of mine. Put the effort in, and it paid off for him. He's in there looking for a big fallow stag, actually. Okay. And he's shot this beautiful 15-point red stag, wild red stag, and a 10-point the next day, I think. But yeah, so you just got to put the effort in. They're there, you know. But all you need is one print.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's deer there somewhere, you know.
That's right. You just need a sign to give it to motivate you, follow it up, and away you go. Yeah. Look, one of the things that really interests me about some of the work you're doing and the time you've been in the industry, and this idea of getting people, as you mentioned, one of the things that we started the podcast was to help people get it started. I'm sure you've noticed it, but and even your story reflects that. You had someone to kind of mentor you in hunting, but a lot of people now, from a generational point of view, don't have that mentor. They haven't started with their mentor, so they're starting from scratch. Yeah. And to me, this is a really important thing, because that's exactly my story. There is no Vanden Bogart, great hunter, in maybe there is, don't know him, or her, don't know him. So it was starting from scratch. So for us, and Ian's the same. It's how do you get started? And I think for a lot of people, there's a lack of, I wouldn't say it's confidence, but probably too much of a fear of the unknown to have a crack at a state forest and something like that. So someone comes into your store or contacts you via, the various social media. What's your advice to get them going, to get them to have a go? Because I find that's the big step for a lot of people to actually have a go.
If they're straight up green and just want to get a firearms license to go hunting because they've seen Meat Eater or they've read a cookbook, right? And there is a lot of people doing quite a lot of that. It's the first step is your local hunting club.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's so important.
Not everybody has it.
I think that's so important.
Yeah, not everybody has a mentor. We've been lucky. My kids were lucky, but not everybody does. And a local hunting club, and I think there should be a local hunting club in every bloody region. They're not hard to get going, and that's the first step, because from that point, you're introduced to not only the rabbit shooter, but the deer hunter, the pig hunter. You'll find your little niche amongst that, and then it's not untoward that some will take you under their wing through their education programs or little tricks of the trade, and you just listen to conversations where you pick up a little bit about Corrion or Oberon or best places to camp, and all of a sudden you're putting a picture together yourself. You might get lucky if someone invites you out on a hunt. But those meetings, those club meetings where venison's on the menu there, they're priceless. You can't buy that information. And this is hunting clubs. When the laws changed down here in 96, 97, and it became mandatory to be a part of a hunting club, that was probably, in my mind, the only good thing that came out of the 96 gun laws. Righto? In that it was a growth of hunting. It was like another golden period in the growth of hunting. I think that's diminished a little bit now, but it still is the best starting point. And that's my advice. Local hunting club, and through GameCon, actually, or Shooters Union, we'll put people in touch with their local hunting club. That's why I think it's so important that the big clubs are active in the big peak bodies are active in establishing hunting clubs in areas where there's not hunting clubs. Hence why our little Windsor Caribou Club is looking at a sub-branch in the Shoalhaven. There's clubs down here, but, another one won't hurt,
I think they also they play a really good role in filling some space. And what I mean by that is hunting is not an easy thing to get into. The day you pick up the Meat Eater cookbook or watch a Meat Eater video, you can't rock on down to the gun shop, get your rifle, get in your car and drive down the park and go and knock yourself over something to eat. It doesn't work that way. So, and we're all impatient. Well, not all of us, maybe. Some of us are less impatient than others, but the demographic that are coming in now, They want it now. They're ready to go and shoot a 20-point stag, get in a helicopter and go skiing in the afternoon. It doesn't happen in this world. So once they've got their enthusiasm and they go and have a conversation with someone at the gun shop, they need a club to keep them stimulated, almost
motivated,
to get them motivated to go through that 6, 8 week, 10-week process, get your first firearm, and off you go. If you're lucky to get it that quickly, and then get invited on a hunt. It could be 6 months. And I have this conversation with people weekly that call after listening to the podcast and wanting to understand how to get into it, or just calling the ADA because they've found us somehow. They're keen as mustard, and it's really important that we try and keep them motivated until they get going. And that sometimes can be nothing more than, look, we're going on a hunt in 3 weeks' time. You're not going to be able to shoot, but come anyway. It doesn't matter. We'll build you up and you can experience a lot.
Even having regular trips to the rifle range during the off season so they can shoot a variety of calibers, so they can identify what their limitations are, what they shoot best or worst. I think our last club day, one of the boys had a 416 Ruger there. 375 Ruger, one was ported, one wasn't. So that sort of was a little bit interesting for people. I shoot a 338 a lot, and it's usually when people shoot that, but trying a wide variety of calibers by people that actually are using them. They're not necessarily behind the counter trying to flog you something they got a lot of, but they're actually using calibers for various purposes. And that's like I've got these little doohickeys here. We had Marcus O'Dean from Sporting Shooter come and do a talk at our club a little while back, and how many times you've been out fox shooting of a night and I like to take that pelt home, and you're scrambling around the dark looking for a pair of sticks to take the tail off. There's a little club exercise where we had some 10mm dowel on a high vis string, and that stays in the backpack now. They're the sort of things that keep people, as I say, motivated and hanging around while their license goes through the process.
I think I like the idea too, of actually getting people to the range, because one of the things, shooting, especially shooting, is like everything. It's susceptible to trend, and a lot of the conversations I have with people is that there's a disappointment with the firearm that they own, and because they, as you said, they bought what was on the shelf or what was offered to them, and it doesn't fit. It's not fit for purpose. It's fit for the purpose that it was designed for, but it doesn't fit their purpose. And so getting there and actually saying, well, you know what, you can get a rifle that can, that can shoot a flea at 5,000 yards or whatever it is, but that's not the situation you're likely to find yourself in when you're hunting. And I remember I was at the range and having this conversation again with someone about he was a little disappointed. Certainly this thing he had could shoot off a bench like no one's business, but after 3 or 4 hours lugging it through the scrub, it was a little bit, it didn't fit the purposes he wanted to.
The movement towards long range hunting now is one of those areas where people, you're seeing people shooting sambar now at sort of 600, 700, 800, 960 metres is one of them, using their 338 laps or their 300 Remington Ultra Mags or whatever it happens to be. Well, not a lot of people can handle the recoil of those things either.
No.
What I mean? A lot of people are shocked. And one of the things that, recommendations, I want a pig rifle. Well, the 308's very popular, but a lot of, a small frame person might not handle the recoil of a 308. So this is where those range days are important, where they can test things out. They can shoot better, place the bullet more accurately, and still get the same result.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I helped a friend get his first couple of animals, and he took a number with the 223, and there was an opportunity for a larger game, and we put him on a 6.5, and he just couldn't handle it. So we actually went, well, you know what, the game, let's find the game that suits that caliber. And I mean, he still got himself a very nice fallow deer in the right situation, but Yeah, he just could not handle that 6.5, and I could actually see that he was talking himself out of handling it. You know, he was starting to anticipate how much this thing was going to bark and kick on him. And I mean, it was a 6.5 Swede, which is not a is not a gun that mauls you. But for him, that was at that point where it was a bit too far, and that's really, you know, I think a really important part of that club scene, because to be honest, I didn't get that. The first rifle I bought, the first centerfire rifle I bought was a 30-30.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'd watched too many cowboy movies. And you know, the first time you let a 30-30 off on your shoulder, the first time ever, you realise what you've got in your hand. It's not what they're shooting in cowboy movies. But, you know, so that for me, that was a big learning curve. But for a lot of people, you know, that's the kind of thing that can put you off. Luckily, I was not bright enough to be worried about it, and I kept on going. But having a club situation where, and even if it's a small club, where you can get that advice, you can have to talk to people, and you might be able to, as you said, have a range day, or just key up with someone and say, hey, look, I'd meet you at the range, get a bit of experience on different approaches, different things, and get yourself sorted. Because I find that because there isn't this network anymore where you kind of learn these things from people within your family, people have to take a little bit more of a leap of faith into getting into hunting. And I think sometimes people get lost on that leap when it doesn't first work out. You know, it just doesn't work for them.
When I went through the same thing with Chloe, so we went through the whole 2-3 stage, and I was still, actually now I'm shooting a 20-50 Tikka, but that's another story. But it was a 2-3 that we shoot most of our fallow deer with, right? You've got smaller properties. We've got to watch where the bullets are going, all that sort of stuff. But because she wanted to hunt red deer and then later sambar deer, which she is now, we went through that whole 6.5 Swede and up to the 308. And I found it was the noise that was the big issue, not so much the recoil. And it was a 243 wind that she ended up shooting her red stag with. So she could shoot well, place the shots, and it had the same result. So, yeah, it's vitally important to go down. And this is the problem these days too, is that people aren't doing the amount of shooting with varying calibers. You know, when we started, we'd go to Broken Hill chasing gats, and we'd have too many guns with us, all different calibers, and we shoot off a lot of rounds of ammo. Big properties, safe to shoot, but no one's. Just doesn't seem to me that people are shooting the wide variety of calibers and actually finding out what suits them best. That's because they're on the internet, they're being told what's best. You know, 6.5 Creedmoor. Oh, I'll get a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah, it's in vogue. Yep.
It's in vogue.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I also feel for those people who don't have that ability to try those things out, because that's been a big part of what we want to do, is kind of give them the confidence to have a go, because that's it. You know, if you don't have that and you don't have that connection, you're going to go to the next best thing, which is, you know, social media. And of course, you know, probably the most, other than cat photos, you know, is questions about what's the best gun should I buy?
Yeah, I think half of that is actually still going back to the impatience of the new hunter. He doesn't want to go through that process. I'm working with a fellow at the moment. He's new to the club. He's never shot an animal in his life. He's restrained. He's got enough restraint to say, look, I'm not ready for that yet. I want to get used to a rifle. He's got his license, and I lend him a 22, and he goes down to the range, and he shot that 22 for 6 months. Yeah. You just go down the range and you shoot that 22 for 6 months. And then I lent him a 223. And he's been down there for 3 months with the 223 before he had to go with the 308 and the 270. And he's now decided what he wants. And it's none of the calibers that he borrowed off me. It's something completely different. But he went through the time. Now, he's probably the first person in 10 years that I know that's done that. Everyone else is too impatient to do that. They don't want to buy all of those boxes of rounds. Rounds are expensive. You know, and they don't want to go through that process. I just don't think these people, I say these people, you know, a lot of new hunters that are coming in don't have the patience.
Patience and opportunity. Like you go back to, you spent 6 months at the range when he's 22, right? Back in the early 90s, we'd be going out shooting rabbits.
Yeah.
We'd take each of us, 3 or 4 of us, 500 rounds of ammo each.
Yeah.
And we'd shoot 500 rabbits each. You know,
opportunity.
They're not there anymore, so you're not doing that shooting. And of course, your rabbits. Oh, there's foxes too. What do we? Well, we'll get an odd fox with 22. We missed the odd fox, so 22 magnums and 223s come into vogue.
Yeah.
Now then we were shooting rabbits at 150, 200 metres with the 223s. Well, how far can we shoot with a 243?
Yeah.
No? And when
and uncle would have one, or your dad would have one, or you could borrow it off someone, and it was just.
And then, we shot that, and with the 243 at 200 metres. Why do we miss the one at 350 metres? So then you're looking at the whole progression of loads and bullet weights and trajectories, and before we knew it, we were sighting our 243s and 308s, 3 inches high at 100 yards, to shoot goats and pigs at 400 yards. It was, but that's what I mean when people don't. The social media and the internet has made it so that they're not doing that now. An opportunity. Yeah, it's easier to watch some dude doing it on a YouTube clip.
Yeah. And buy everything he's got. Yeah.
You just remind me now of the good old days.
Well, that's an interesting point you made, the good old days, because that's a common theme. But I don't question it, but I think that the reality is that for a lot of us there is no good old days. These we're making the good old days now.
Right now.
And that's it. So, and that's what it's always been a big push for me, is about how do I get someone to start making their own good old days? Because as I said, there was never any good old days. My old man passed away when I was quite young, and he did take us fishing a couple of times, but it was a handful of times. But for whatever reason, I don't know why. Maybe it's the milkman or something like that. But I've always wanted to fish, and I've always wanted to hunt. No one else in my family does, but I mean that's just the way we are, and so it was always just there for me. So I pursued it with as soon as I got a car,
that's
I drove the Belmont Range. And literally turned up there, and today, my name's Mark. I want to shoot guns, and they said, "Yep, we can help you with that, young man." And away we went, and so that was 32 years ago. So that kind of stories, well, that's my story, but a lot of people I know are kind of at the start of that story, and they don't know where to start or how to start because they haven't got that good old days to rely on. So, and I feel for them because I know that they're going to make a lot of decisions along the way that they kind of go, well, maybe.
So when you started hunting and fishing as well, did you naturally then take the fish and the game you shot home for the table?
No.
So when?
Yeah, that's a different. So when I lived in inner city Brisbane. Okay, I lived in inner city Brisbane, which right in the city there, which in the what they used to call the bedroom suburbs like Paddington and all that, were mostly working class, worked on railways and the various such. So they're all completely different now. They're all like every inner city suburb. They're now the high end of town, but once upon a time they were just the working class suburbs. I grew up there. I was always interested in being outdoors, even though I lived in inner city. So from an early age we were catching trains out to the bay or exploring and stuff like that. And fishing for us was the Brisbane River. So we used to go down to the Brisbane River, and at the time, Schultz's gun shop, which was a well-known gun shop here in Brisbane, it's closed down now. They were actually still in the city. So they're in George Street, which was right in the city, and they used to sell tackle by weight. So we could go in there and buy 2 hooks and sinkers and swivel, and they put it on scales and put it in a little paper bag and sell it to us, and we'd go down and fish in the river just with line and catch catfish. And that was out of the Brisbane River in the early 70s. So basically they glowed in the dark. There was so much you wouldn't want to. You didn't. They would. And so that was my start to fishing, and then I started to get go out to the bay and do more saltwater fishing and things like that. And as I got older, I got more and more advanced in fishing. there was, until we got to the time where I was actually bringing home fish, so bream and whiting and all those kind of things. With hunting, it was, again, starting from scratch. The first 10 years of my hunting was bushwalks. So, I'd be wandering around, and then we got onto a property up central Queensland that had pigs, but there was never ever consideration of taking those animals home to eat. Oh, pigs, you touch them. Well, I don't know, and I don't know if they were, but that was the general consensus. So it was only when we really started chasing deer that there was this idea that that's actually a food, and of course goat. But actually, I started deer before I started goat. That was a food source. Yeah. So that's pretty new to me. So I've only been doing that for a fairly short time, and I like to do it. I mean, we've got a chest freezer downstairs, and I think there's 16 full meals made up, which are venison. Yeah. And there's the dogs as happy as happy, and there's fish in there as well. But that's all pretty recent in a lot of ways. And I'm very basic in that journey. So I want to get into making sausages and things like that. But,
when I shot my first rabbit and I was 12 years old, a single shot bow air 22, and I remember the old man saying back mum at the campsite, if he hadn't got any closer, he could have touched it, right? I can still vividly remember the vapor trail, and that was those days. It was Winchester's super speeds, right? And the vapor trail in this gully was nice, cool gully, but Dad didn't hesitate when we went out to camp, cleaning that rabbit and putting it in the esky.
Yeah,
and that has stuck with me for forever. So when I started deer hunting, there was no question, or goats. There was no question of not trying or not eating them. And like Ian said, it was a matter of trial and error. Separating the various muscle joints, which I found reasonably easy to do. But mum, the first sambar I brought home, there's 2 frigging big legs, or the kitchen sink at mum's place. What are we going to do with all that? We'll be right, And I was loaded into mate's place with handfuls of venison, You should have been with me. I got one, But and that's what I say, for many meat eater, the show is it's like you're turning on the lights.
It's reminding people.
Yeah.
But then I think to myself, yes, but then I think to myself, all he's doing now is making it cool again.
Yeah. Well,
because for many of us that were brought up, it was just the way you did it. And by the same token, he's taken the emphasis away from your horns and antlers, and making the trophy the meat.
Yeah.
And truly it is. The first deer we shoot every season, we'll be looking for a buck or a stag. Yeah, absolutely. Oh no, there's a doe.
Yep, done.
Esky's full.
Monkeys off your back.
Oh, there's another one. A couple days later, But that's the first thing we do now.
Yeah, look, I was watching one of his episodes, and what really rang for me true is that he's talking to himself like he does, and he goes, "Be a good predator."
Yeah.
And I think that very simple statement kind of encapsulates what we're talking about with meat, because that's what you're doing. You're being predacious, red of tooth and claw. You're actually taking that thing for food. And as I said, that's only been a fairly recent thing for me. And I don't mean 2 weeks, but I mean in my hunting journey, it's been in the latter part of my hunting journey where I've hunted game that you would eat, and also too, like a lot of things, there were certain myths which I regard them as myths now. Like, don't ever eat a pig. Never eat a pig. Don't eat a pig. You don't want to eat a pig. I've eaten pigs.
Yeah.
They're like any kind of animal. They're either good ones or bad ones.
That's right.
Have enough knowledge to figure out what one is what.
Yeah.
And treat the meat in such a way that you reduce all those risks. And
that's right.
Okay. And that's it. But there was for through my 20s and into my 30s, where we were hunting in central Queensland, you didn't even pick them up. You shot them and you let it. The property owner says you just let them sit where they lay. Let them rot out on the ground. So there's no idea. There was no in that particular instance about taking meat from these animals at all.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, like the pigs we have taken to eat, and it's not very regular that we'll take pigs home because, especially ones out west, you know, but where we've shot them in New South Wales State Forests around Oberon and stuff like that, they're a good pig, you know. They're a good pig, and it's just another resource, you know. But,
I've shot, as I said, if they're kind of in line with the New England Highway around there, you know, the pigs I've shot along the various state forests in line with the New England Highway have been very good animals. The ones further west, like on the Newell and past the Newell, then you start to get into animals that are, you know, and even then though, that I've been in Pilliga in certain years where the pigs have been of very good quality. I've been in the Pilliga in other years where basically you can just tell.
Don't touch it.
Yeah, there you can just look. That is not a meat animal.
I have a fear of that because I'm terribly colourblind. Hence the reason I've got a dog that can track blood, because I can't see that on anything. But I couldn't tell you if pork was cooked. And I know if you don't cook pork properly, especially wild pork, you can get all sorts of nasties. So I just leave it alone. No interest whatsoever. Yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, and again, that's, you know, that's individual choice. But for me, as you said, that journey towards as hunting as a food source has taken some time to get there. So, and I mean, in a way, you know, it's kind of, it hasn't revigorated, but it's made it more expansive once again to actually think, okay, I can do something else now with this. And it's funny you talk about rabbits, because I'd shot pig, deer, and goats before I shot a rabbit.
Yeah. Well, Queensland, mate, there's not many up there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
There's heaps up here. You're talking about
property in Ben Lomond, you know, in New South Wales. That was the first time I'd really shot any number of rabbits, and that was 3 or 4 years ago. I'd never hunted rabbits.
Yeah,
I think rabbit was the first thing that I didn't even shoot it, but it was the first thing that was shot with a rifle that I was present. That was my dad shooting it. I think I must have been a good enough boy at Sunday morning church, and I said, "Go on, let's go shoot a rabbit when we get home from church," and off we went. But that got quartered up and pan fried. But I mean, coming from a country town in New Zealand, a lot of the all hunting was for the table. I don't even recall anyone just going hunting for the sake of it and leaving things there. Everything was eaten. I remember a time where my father had passed away, and I missed out on duck shooting season, which was very exciting for me as a young boy. And I was down at the local river, and there was some ducks swimming. I thought, oh, ducks! I'm going to get one of these ducks. So I picked up the first rock, and I threw it at this duck, and I missed it completely. I thought, oh, but it didn't go away. So I picked up 3 more rocks, and on the 4th rock, I sconned it in the head, and it tipped upside down in the water and floated down, and I caught it at the other end. I thought, you beauty, I'm an 8-year-old mighty hunter. Just down from where I was the Christian camp that had let go a bunch of ducks and clipped their wings and put them in and I had no idea. And it wasn't until I was walking back to the house thinking how proud I was that I grabbed it by its feet and its wings flipped open and they were all clipped. I thought, oh, what a bastard. But we still ate it.
Still ate it.
It was part of the culture.
So rabbits, and like, you know, and so whilst I understood how to break down game, that was, you know, not too long ago. It was the first time I ever broken down rabbits, you know, and we'd got 20 or 30 of them, so it was a good process to do it on the back of the truck. But again, and I brought home heaps of rabbit. We were frying it up and cooking various things different ways. But yeah, that's, you know, that's that. It's a funny journey because, you know, people go, oh, you start with rabbits. No, in fact, that was the latter part of my journey. And I bought a 22 about 10 years ago, or maybe longer, simply on the fact that I'd walked into a local gun shop here in Brisbane that's no longer there, and someone was in front of me selling a CZ Lux for next to nothing because he didn't want it, and I was literally behind them going. So they went, and I got it, and I thought, this is just beautiful CZ Lux with Bavarian stock and all that stuff. nominally gave it to my wife. You know, it's easy. You're going to come to the range with me, and she shot it a couple of times, and it's been in the safe. And I've got mostly 30 cals, but I've got that 22 just for having it. So, you know, that it's that a real learning curve and learning experience for whoever you are. In fact, the single common caliber I've got is 12 gauge because I love guns. I love shotguns.
Yeah. It's hunting rabbits. I love it every summer. I just love it. I could go hunting rabbits in the morning or an evening and fishing in the morning. It's just, mate, I do that till the last of my days, you know. And hunting rabbits, particularly in summer with a rifle, particularly in summer when the grass is getting longer, it does hone your skills for the bigger game come February, March, April. You know, my kids when they were learning, Dad, how'd you see that? You know, it's the sun rabbit's ear, and you can see the pink ear in the grass. You know, it's just those little things that you learn just by hunting rabbits. So it's very important for me to actually go back every year to hunt rabbits. Just to hone those skills again. You know.
I love walking them up with a shotgun. I love
same here.
That, you know, well, there you go, and that kind because I mean, when we could travel, I was doing that every couple of years in the UK with birds, which is you know, I haven't shot too many rabbits, but I've shot pheasant and I've shot partridge and I've shot, and that's simply because that's where my hunting's taken me. But again, there's a similarity to it, you know. It's that it's not driven, but it's very similar in that way to it.
Well, it's funny you talk about the UK, and that's bucket list. I remember I was talking to you about going over there and shooting. Brody, that was planned for when I sold the shop. And of course, that's gone. And the money's gone on the house. But you know, COVID bloody ruined everything. But like I've got myself a little 2-inch chambered 410 little hammer gun, little petite little thing, and I'm having a great time shooting rabbits with it at the moment. You know,
sounds
just
like
awesome
great fun.
Yeah, great fun. As traditional as it gets. You know, I think that's what I like about it the most. It's good fun.
Yeah, with COVID knocking our travels down south on the head, I'm turning my deer indicator into a bunny buster, and she's been great, just pointing. So it went from the 410 and now it's the bow. We're getting close enough and sneaky enough now to start knocking them over like that, which has been quite fun because it's just like just out the door, just here, then off you go up the paddock. Yeah, magic. But I've never been into small game hunting. Once I got the deer bug.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, you don't go back to bunnies. Like, what did you do that for?
When I was, it's like that though, because when I was single, well, not married, I was with my wife, but we weren't married. But I don't think I spent an Easter at home for 4 or 5 years. You know, that we were going out together, and it was always down to Victoria. Once I got that deer hunting bug, it was be all and end all. You know, and that's. A lot of money's gone in those days too. Yes.
Yes. Before I had my first son, it was the raw and then the fallow. You know, the rut. You could do them both. You were gone for 12, 14 days straight, but you could do them both. You know, or you might have a pit stop away to get some new gear and stuff like that. Generally, it was a pit stop to get warmer gear because we're now heading south in the Nundle. But so doing the red and the fallow.
Yeah, that's right. We did the same thing. Yeah, we'll shoot up to the Brisbane Valley, sort of late March, early April, and then back home to hunt fallow after the school holidays. You know, it works quite well most years. You know. Well,
we have I take my oldest on didn't go this year because of COVID. Unfortunately, we still managed to get away, but it stuffed up. The snap lockdown, you know, pushed everything a couple of weeks, and he's back at school. But we have a property we visit down there in below Tamworth, and we go there every year, and that's his experience in hunting. He's still not handling a rifle, but he's just with me when we're out in the scrub. So he's been there 3 years. So you know,
it's I think Chloe. Well, I was taking Chloe into state forests when she was probably 6, and her first introduction to us for stuff was, you know, I'd let her cook bacon on the cooker. You know what I mean? And and it was just there was no turning back. And you know, she'll still she'll still mention that. That was Sunny Corner State Forest. She'll still mention that, you know. That sticks in their mind, and it's just a great learning curve for him, you know. And he'll do the same thing with his kids,
yeah,
you know, as ours will, you know.
Yeah, for us, you know, and people talk about how do you get kids into hunting, because you know there's the obvious, the shock value of hunting an animal. And I said, well, for us it was fishing.
Yeah, same as me. Yeah.
By, you know, the boys by 3 or 4 had an inkling of understanding that a fish was food, and this was the process that went from there to there. So, and that then allowed my eldest to be quite comfortable when we were going hunting. You know, he's quite interesting. And we're in Pilliga one year, and we Tim got a pig, and he cleaned it up. He wanted to take it for meat, and he cleaned it up in camp. And you know, my eldest just was mesmerised by the whole process. He was just there watching it for like an hour, going, oh, okay, yeah. And so he was used to, you know, he was used to the idea of that's where food came from, and I was very happy with that, because I mean, unfortunately, too many people don't know that.
You can't always convert people to the hunting lifestyle, but you can convert them to the acceptance of hunting by doing stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
I love my sisters-in-law dearly, and my older sister-in-law was a school teacher, and you know there was times there where she wouldn't even look at a venison meal. You know, venison stroganoff, no, I'll pass. I'll have a sandwich. And you know, over the years, Naomi would, you know, quite happily now sit down to venison the way we do it. You know, and that was funny because her husband is one of the best fishers I've ever met. So fishing was always on, but not hunted animals, you know what I mean? So it's education. And now with the friends of my kids that come into the house now, I'll be at the seat cleaning a rabbit, and the girls will hang around saying, oh, what are you doing? You know, I'm doing this, I'm doing, oh, wow, you know. It's all how it's presented, I guess, you know, and just.
Yeah. And look, we had some fun when my son was first at school, and I was worried that there'd be, you know, a bit of blowback. But in fact, there's far more curiosity about, you know, hunting than judgment. There seems to be far more, oh, okay, what are you doing? And so people are trying to rationalize what we're doing and how we're doing it. We had an interesting one once where we had a weapons licensing inspection, you know, and they rang up like they do, and I said, yeah, look, I'm home, come around on this date. And they came around, and the 2 coppers came up, and we went through the process, and it was pretty easy. And just as they were going, my wife had brought home my first from school, and my youngest was still not at school, so she'd gone pick them up both, and the little fellow was asleep. He was asleep in his mum's arms, and so my eldest came in, and the 2 coppers and I were talking, and my eldest kind of shushed the copper, said, shh, my little brother's asleep, you know, and everyone had a bit of a giggle about that. So they gave him this kind of little sticker, like, you know, a little square sticker, like, you know, junior detective sticker. Yeah. I said, oh, mate, I'll put it on a lanyard for you, and you can wear it around your neck, you know. So he had this little badge, and he wanted to take it to school for show and tell. And I said, yeah, no problem. So he took it to show and tell. And then he's like, you know, I got this phone call. And they kind of said, yeah, you know, he kind of went to school and said, oh, I got this sticker from the police. And they said, oh, how'd you get that? I said, the police came to Daddy's house to talk to him about all his guns. You know?
Yeah.
yeah, don't worry about that. So, you know, it's like that. So, but I've actually found that I haven't, you know, either the people who don't like it are too polite or too scared to say something out of it. Generally, there's been this kind of curiosity about, okay, so what are you doing? How's that process happening? And I think that's actually the best way to engage people who might not ever want to hunt, but actually have the, you know, genuine curiosity about what you're doing and wanting to know what you're doing, not from a judgment point of view, but, you know, just an interest point of view.
Interesting story. The same thing can be said about firearm safety. Okay, so after I started going out with my wife, and she was not a hunting family, okay, and I was as a rep then, so we take her out to Mudgee going rabbit shooting, and very quickly Fran started hunting herself, rabbits and foxes and so on and so forth. So when the kids came along, we had this thing that if the kids ever wanted or showed interest in seeing Dad's guns, then Dad would show them the guns. So you're taking that the mystique away from it.
Yes.
Okay. And then you have that. Never really had any worries with the kids, and because they never wanted to see the guns unless Dad was home. Dad, what are you doing? I'm going to clean this. Yeah, we diffused that situation by the way we went about it, and then it really didn't sort of really hit home the impact that those little things have until when Chloe started at school. And the same thing. Oh shit! What if something comes up and she mentions this, that, or the other thing? And I don't know what came up at the time, but guns came up and hunting came up, and Chloe came home and said, "Oh, just tell me all about it." I said, "Oh yeah, great. What did you say?" I just told him, "Dad, that's where our food comes from." And she was only in first class maybe, and from those early, like with your boys, and no doubt your guys, it's just the sooner you get them involved and educate them properly, it pays dividends so much down the track.
Yeah.
And now look at Chloe. Now, my middle daughter, happy shooting rabbits and termite mounds, and then Nathan on the other hand wants to hunt everything in the world, and then you got Chloe on the other hand who's now following, I guess, the advocacy role as well, making a living in the industry, and she's a firearm safety awareness trainer as well, and she's training people in it. I mean, who would have thought that, just showing the kids a gun to take the mystique away from a safety point of view would lead to all that.
It's a very good point.
Yep. So that's not a bad place to really end, really. The fact, that journey, that, just that idea of just, slowly immersing and exposing someone and where they could take that, because, you'd be hard pressed to guess that was the future that she would take it, and that she'd make a career out of something that, was just a pastime.
And the same, you could take the same path with non-hunters, non-shooters. Your guns spend most of their time with the safe, don't they?
Yeah,
really. So yeah, it's interesting.
Before we let you go, geez, you've covered a lot. But the two things that you're really interested in at the moment that's keeping you busy day to day is Shooters Union and your hook and bone business. Was there another component that you're still working with? Another business that you're still working within?
Yeah,
was your distributor business?
My sole business now is as a sales rep or a sales agent, but COVID sort of slowed that right down for the last 8 weeks. But yeah, that's pretty much the three things now. Yeah,
more on the distribution side though, Craig, to the shops and the like, rather than the general public.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's not to the general public so much now. It's just the shops, retail, and then I think hook and bone all going well. I'll develop that where we can sell that to the general public, perhaps, or if it all goes well, maybe pass on to a wholesaler to sell to retailers.
Okay, so for hook and bone, if people wanted to have a look at the merchandise and jump on and buy a hoodie and whatnot, how do they find it?
Yeah, the best way is social media at the moment till the website starts. That's Hook and Bone Outdoors on Facebook, or Hook and Bone Trading Co. on Instagram.
Righto, no worries. And we'll put a link to that in the description of this vid so people can find their way. And for the New South Wales listeners that are going to be interested in what you're doing with Shooters Union, signing up, making sure that they support the group, how do they find you there?
Shooters Union Facebook page. Shooters Union website. And there's a link to the New South Wales website.
Okay, excellent. So send people there as well. Yeah. Mark?
Very cool. Yeah, look, I always get philosophical when people ask me about hunting and why I hunt, and I keep reading, Sand County Almanac. I always come back to that, and about it's a bastardization of the quote, but what value is 40 freedoms if there's no blank spots on the map type thing, and that's what it is for me.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the fact that there's still an activity that I can do that I am completely responsible for the outcome of that activity.
That's right.
It's all on me. Success, failure, there's no other way to palm it off. There's no, blow the whistle or something like that. No, it's use, and I that's probably what the great connection is for me. And so I want my boys to experience that. I don't want them to live in a world where all that's removed. I want them to be able to experience that.
Yeah, and I didn't really realise, growing up going through hunting, I did not realise the impact that teaching my kids to hunt and fish was going to have on me. And as I said before, that's my sole focus on why I'm doing what I'm doing. So others can do it, and my grandkids are going to be able to do it. And when I'm in the deathbed, I can at least say that we did our best.
Yeah.
To keep the whole thing going along.
Yeah, I think that's why your message about unity is so important. I asked this in a previous podcast. It's confusing for the average punter out there to figure out who to back, who to listen to, who to support, because
it is.
There's too many peak bodies. There's too many swinging
too many
dicks.
peak bodies. Too many peak bodies. There's some are going good, some aren't. You don't hear from half of them.
Sensationalized social media. You don't know whether it's true, whether it's not. So there needs to be a push from the ADA, the SSAA, all of the major ones that are out there to say, this is real news. I'm hearing almost every other day at the moment that we're losing the freight industry, and we're not going to be able to, ship goods around. And I don't know if that's bullshit or not. I got no idea.
No, it's not bullshit. So that's actual fact. But I think there's light at the end of a tunnel now. It's common knowledge. Went out yesterday afternoon. So Star Trek and Australia Post look like stepping up to that. Okay, solving that issue. But that's that sort of issue. So there's a couple others that'll come on board. That's where CIFA's been invaluable in working towards that. But the other issues with it too is the cost of freight coming out of being imported. Like a container of gun bags. The freight on a container of gun bags last year, to give you an example, was $4,000. Okay, the same container this year is $13,000.
Wow.
So the effect of COVID, everybody's looking at surcharges all the way down the line to recoup what they've lost. Okay, so we're going to see, we might see some shortages still. Okay, because keep in mind the Yanks are busy filling up their shelves, so we might see some shortages here. But the big thing will be price increases going forward. I was going to say something else then too, but so the freight issue is a big issue, but there's been a lot of people behind the scenes working towards that.
I think the thing for me is there's a lot of people, there's a lot of noise, a lot of voices, and there's a lot of rubbish. Who do you listen to? And without that unity, and without everyone driving the message in the right direction through the right peak, then you just don't know who to listen to, and you don't know who the right people are. And that's a real challenging problem.
I agree with you. And this is why it's important that that's what we're trying to do with GameCon at the moment, is trying to make GameCon that conduit, if you like.
Yeah.
Because it's already got member clubs as a peak body, but the apathy amongst some of those clubs is terrible. But trying to create dialogue between GameCon, Shooters Union, which we do, CIFA, which we do, SSAA New South Wales, which we do, but then we need to know. I think the biggest issue is if Shooters Union or GameCon is going to make a push on New South Wales national park hunting, right? Well, what's SSAA doing? So we don't want to step on those toes. We need to be all heading in the same direction. And it's the swapping of information, I think, is where we sort of fall apart. I'm not talking about forming new organisations to take the glow away from that organisation A or organisation B. It's mainly to sort of know that we're all going in one direction. That's what we're trying to do now with GameCon, is just change that around a little bit. And we're making some headway there. Shooters Union is a member of GameCon, so there's some expertise there as well. I hope that the way that SSAA and Shooters and Fishers Party are working together now in New South Wales, that'll see a big change in the tide in 2023.
Well, Craig, thanks for. I think we're at 2 hours and 20 minutes, mate.
Yeah,
we had a good half an hour of chit chat at the beginning.
So thank you very much for your time tonight, and thanks for telling us about your stories, and especially about your advocacy work. I know hook and bones, are pretty important to you, but I think for a lot of us, you getting in there fighting a good fight for shooting and hunting with Shooters Union is really the big end of town. So, mate, we appreciate your effort in that, and good luck with 2023. And having some influence politically in New South Wales, because as you said, I'm a firm believer, if you guys have a win there, it tends to,
flow on.
Flow on, gets people's juices flowing. They think, okay, we can do something here. So that's really important. So, mate, good luck with that. And again, good luck with your new business, Hook and Bone, and keep getting those bunnies.
Thanks, boys. Really appreciate you having me. Hey, it was good fun.
Yeah, it was really insightful. All of these sessions that we do, you learn so much. I don't profess to be any form of expert. We're just facilitating a conversation, and it's always really good. So, yeah, appreciate your time.
And that's it. Like you said in the very beginning, the idea of helping people out. Well, we can talk about hunting and we can talk about state forests, but I think this is just as important. This is going to give, as you said, the more learned approach. Well, this is what we really want to do is help people get a better understanding of the whole spectrum of what hunting and fishing and the outdoors and shooting is all about. So having people like you on and giving your perspective is really, really important.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for that, guys.
Good on you. Cheers, Craig.
Thanks, boys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.